Welcome to Women Igniting Change, the place to be for women leaders and decision makers who are passionate about changing the world and determined to act. I'm your host, Robin Jorgensen, former corporate executive, global speaker, and founder and CEO of Women Igniting Change. Let's dive in. Hey, change makers. Welcome back to the Women Igniting Change podcast. Joining me in the studio today is Danielle Gletow. She is a passionate children's rights advocate and the founder and executive director of One Simple Wish, an incredible organization dedicated to restoring hope and happiness to those who have been impacted by the trauma of foster care and childhood crisis. She has been featured on numerous TV appearances, including Nightline and the NBC Nightly News. She was recognized as a top 10 CNN hero, was honored as one of the most influential moms in America by Family Magazine, and a multitude of other accolades. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. Danielle and I connected, 4 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah, so I'm thrilled to have you on this platform. So can you share with us a pivotal moment from your personal journey that inspired you to start One Simple Wish to begin with?
Sure. My husband and I had become foster parents in 2006. And at the time, our goal was to be part of a program that was called Foster Adopt. So you would have children in your home that were at a higher likelihood of either they were legally free to be adopted or higher likelihood to be eligible for adoption. I could get into why now, looking back, that doesn't feel really great for me. But that was our entrance into learning about the foster care system. We didn't know anything going into it other than statistics, 500,000 children nationwide, moving through the foster care system, in the state of New Jersey, over 10,000, 110,000 plus children waiting to be adopted.
Wow.
So, again, back then, it was statistics. We didn't really, have, I would say, a deep understanding. But from the moment that the first child came to our home, he had been removed from his home because of abuse allegations. Just that, I think the reality really setting in of this is happening to real humans, and this is a devastating, completely upending situation for them. And through all of it, through all of the difficulty, the challenges, the trauma, they really wanted just a few things, which is what most people want. They wanted to be back home. They wanted to feel loved, and they wanted to just be a kid. Yeah. And, that really struck me. And when I would talk to people back then about foster care and about the child welfare system and these beliefs that I hold, that I'm deeply passionate about. I was kind of the annoying person at holiday dinners that people were like, can we just talk about, football? We don't want to please for fighting injustice. I realized that, it used to frustrate me that people didn't want to dive deep into the core of why these things are wrong in our country. But what I realized is there still is necessity and purpose in getting people to at least hear some of what you're talking about and do something. And I wanted to create something that made it easy for people to not see statistics, but to see people. And then to do something for them, not to do something they wanted to do or they thought someone needed, but to actually hear somebody saying, this is what would bring me joy. This is what would make me feel seen. And then empowering others to give them that. And that's really where One Simple Wish came from. I was a marketing account director working at an agency, and very passionate about, I loved the work that I did. I liked kind of the psychology behind marketing. But I was marketing cosmeceuticals and I didn't care about it, and I felt like I have a skill set that I could apply for certainly a better purpose. And that was really, that moment, that first child coming into our house and just being hit with this reality, that this is not about me and what I want at all.
Right. So going from being a foster parent to an adoptive parent, how has that experience influenced your approach to advocating for children in the foster care system?
I'm sorry, could you ask me again? Because I just...
Yeah, so, your experience from being a foster care parent to an adoptive parent, mm-hmm. How has that influenced your approach to advocating for children in the system?
I think that once I became a parent, period, I just felt like, this instinct takeover of just wanting to like mama bear the world, just feeling like, not that anybody's asking me to do this or that I think that, I yield any sort of extraordinary power to do so, but I really fiercely wanted to protect my children. And when I say my children, I mean just children, just all children. I feel like we're all in this life together, and seeing individuals go through things they did not ask to go through. Not that anybody, I think, asks for trauma, but it really made me feel this just desire to do whatever it was I could to make things a little bit better and a little bit more comfortable, because this is all we've got, this one life. It's not, and so instead of waiting for all of the things to be aligned, waiting for the situation to be perfect, waiting for all of the, needs to be met before we try to also then look for joy or look for happiness, I just thought, I want to be a catalyst for that. I want to tell people, you don't have to wait until everything is all the way you think it should be, or, we shouldn't delay that joy. And I just feel like once I became a parent, it was like, it really stopped being about my own needs and my own, dreams and my own expectations of life, and really about how I feel connected to others, and how I feel like sometimes like helping other people is really, maybe it is selfish because it's just an extension of like maybe what you want to see for yourself. But
right.
That I think becoming a parent just brought that out in me, that fierce, like, I just feel very much like I want to be here for people who maybe feel like they're not ready or can't say the things they want to say.
Yeah. So you've referred to the children in the foster care system as the forgotten children, which is so haunting to me. Educate our listeners into some of the common misconceptions about the foster care system here in the U.S.
Yeah, I'll actually tell you a great one, and I won't mention the company because the company itself is wonderful. Okay. I hope, but the person representing this company, not so much. So, we have a lot of calls with various people, corporations, donors, individual foundation, you name it. And I was and this is very recent, this is within the last year, having a conversation with a head of community, like a community social responsibility kind of person.
CSR, yep.
Yep. And, she was talking to me about our programs and didn't really get it, said like, well, we were really focused on like food insecurity and needs. And I was like, well, this is a need, like happiness is a need. And, and then, she like, of course, told me how great it was that we do what we do, but they would be passing on offering us any kind of support. And then, ended the call with, my husband and I have talked about being foster parents, but, I was thinking like, what if the kid comes in my house and like sets fires or like does something to my pets, and like I have other kids. And I literally, like, it took everything in me not to say to her, what a god awful thing to say about an entire population of children that you've never even met.
Right.
But that assumption that, first of all, maybe her kids are going to do something to their pet one day or set a fire. I mean, the audacity, I think, of people sometimes to say these things, not that I'm shocked. I'm sure as a woman, right? Like the things people say around us, and you're like, did you really just say that?
Right.
But for some reason you felt you could, and maybe she saw in me like some I don't know, some safety in being able to say that, but I did correct her kindly, more kindly than I would have liked to.
Right.
But that unfortunately is something that, through the years, even when my husband and I were fostering, we were at court, and an attorney for the state had come up to us and said, because he knew me, he knew my family, and he said to my husband, "What are you doing with these kids? Can't you get her pregnant and have your own kids?"
I just got chills when you said that.
Oh my gosh. I could give you cringe stories for a decade, because I think that there is this, and I love the show Law and Order SVU. I think it's fantastic, and I love Mariska Hargitay's Joyful Heart Foundation. And I think they're doing a better job now. But I'm sure like the media also portrays,
right,
anytime there's a criminal, the unsub on
right,
what's my other faves? Criminal Minds, like all of these shows, right? It's like the criminal was in foster care. So I think that is, to me, one of the most disgusting things that I can't even fathom how that feels for these human beings to constantly be associated with all this negative. And I just think
perpetuates that narrative that they're damaged goods.
Right. That's something that somehow they're destined to set your house on fire. Right. Like it's, I actually was in a board meeting many, many years ago. I think maybe even before I started Once a Boyish. And one of the board members, they were talking about, they ran a series of group homes, and they were talking about opening up another one, and which there's really not group homes anymore, but there are. They just call them different things now.
Yeah.
But they were talking about this, and they were like trying to reassure the board, because they had to go to zoning. They were trying to reassure the board, like, how are we going to sell this to the neighborhood? And one of the board members, this man, he said, well, don't worry, none of the kids will be fire starters. And I remember sitting there, and I said, I was a fire starter. And he was like, and I was like, yeah, I used to start fires all the time. And he just like didn't know what to do with himself. And again, I think, that is maybe a bit of why I also feel like I am where I'm supposed to be, because I didn't grow up in foster care. I didn't grow up in the child welfare system, but I certainly had my fair share of really interesting experiences. And I come from a broken home, the broken home term.
Mm-hmm.
I come from divorced parents, and lots and lots of terrible things, and was in residential treatment. I feel, this sort of, connection to people who are judged unfairly for even things they didn't do. I mean, I did a lot of the stuff, and I feel like it's still unfair to judge somebody by that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think judging a person by the actions of others or by your assumptions is, I think it's kind of gross. So yeah, long answer, but I feel like that narrative, unfortunately, I don't think is gone. I think a lot of people still hold it. And, I would challenge people to ask why,
right?
How many, this one woman who made that comment, she hadn't met a single child in foster care. So where are you getting this information from?
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the positive piece.
Yeah.
So, Once a Boyish, you serve children in all of the states here in the U.S.
Yes.
And you have a network of over 800 community partner agencies, which is the largest of its kind. That's extraordinary. Walk us through how you collaborate and work with these agency partners to fulfill those wishes for these amazing kids. Give us the process.
Yeah, so we, I believe now there's close to 1,000 partners. At one point there were 2,000, and we kind of consolidated those events. So it's really grown. It is nationwide. Once an agency, which is another nonprofit church, school, or grassroots community organization, and once they become a vetted community partner with the organization, they have the ability to submit wishes on the platform that then come to our program team, who review those needs first try to say, is there another way to get this need met? Like maybe a program, because we're not government funded.
Yep.
We're funded by foundations and individuals,
Right.
primarily individuals, I should say. Foundations are very difficult. And they make sure that there's not like another opportunity to meet the need elsewhere. Once they determine there's not, or it's just something that is purely a wish, that gets valued. It goes on the site, and then we have tens of thousands of wish granters all over the country and beyond that come on and grant the wish. Our team then fills the wish, and they make sure that the receipt of that wish is as normal and comfortable for the recipient as possible. So I know that people love these like Instagram, YouTube, TikToks, whatever, where somebody like goes and surprises somebody with
grand gesture.
Right. And, they have a camera on them, and there's all these like expectations of gratitude being expressed. And not to say we've never done that, but I find it kind of icky. I think that's what the kids say, like the things that give you the ick. That kind of gives me the ick now, because this isn't about you as a donor and what you want to give someone, and it's not your experience. Like, so if there's an individual, if there's a child who's separated from their siblings in foster care, making a wish for this like really cool bike, and we want it to come from someone they know. We don't want some stranger to show up with a camera in their face or expect like a hug or a high five or some lengthy thank you note. It should just be as normal and natural for them as possible. And I think that's where like dignity and privacy and like respect come in. So we do that. I think that's certainly prevented us from having as much exposure as other organizations do, because they film everything. But I feel better about it. So, and I know that our kids and young adults do too. So we have no age limit. So we grant wishes. You could be 5, you could be 15, you could be 55. It's no age limit. If anyone's ever spent time in foster care, or they are in crisis, currently in crisis, dealing with a crisis situation, they can use our program.
Wow, that's incredible. So I was going to ask you how you serve children who have aged out of the foster care system, but you just answered it beautifully. So there really isn't any limit to that.
No. And as far as like the aging out, community. So what we've found lately is that one of the barriers, so in order for them to access the program, they have to go through a community partner. But what we were seeing is that a lot of our young adults no longer had contact with a caseworker or a social service agency. And so, getting to us to make a wish was becoming difficult. So we've actually created a new program. We're going to officially launch a pilot version of it on April 1st. We did hire the team. So we've hired 3 individuals with lived experience. They've all been in foster care. Wow. They are going to be an internal agency called OSW by Us. And they are the ones who will be doing direct intake. So if someone's an adult now, was in foster care, and wants to submit a wish, they don't need an agency anymore. They can use our internal OSW by Us agency, which is staffed with individuals who actually were in foster care. And right now it's a pilot because, I'm sure we're going to make mistakes. And so we want to control the environment as best we can so that we can see how to fix it. But we're really excited. We expect to serve within this time period, several hundred individuals who've aged out, and we're really looking forward to it. We're looking forward to like this being a true built by individuals who've actually been in the system.
Yeah, I think that lived experience is so key, because you can hire a team all day long who have the passion around a given topic, but to have that lived experience, it just the recipient of the wish and those that are asking for the wish, there's just a instant connection between the two that makes them feel safe and heard and valued from one of their own, which I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to any kind of, if you've ever been through, disease, loss, right? When there are other people who have shared that experience, the connection that you have to them is different and it's not something you can manufacture. So, for all the experiences I've had, I haven't had that experience. And so, and neither have our entire staff. Some have, but not all. And so it was really important to us that, there's somebody who understands language, who understands, perspective. Because, another thing is, and I found this more lately on social media, there's a lot of talk about like self-care and boundaries. And it's like all of that is great for a meme. But in practice, a lot of people do not actually give others grace.
Right.
And they really don't respect boundaries. I think social media has done some really great stuff and some really terrible stuff to us as a society. But for sure, having somebody really get it because they've been through it is something you can't fake.
Right. Yeah, you can't manufacture that.
No. Yeah. I mean, I'm the most, I would like to think I am a very empathetic person. If somebody's next to me and they're not feeling great, I'm not feeling great.
Right.
If I'm very much absorbing whatever's around, and not to say that that's always the best thing either, but it's still not the same as genuinely knowing what someone has been through because you've been through it. And even that has its limitations, because your experience in a situation is not going to be identical to somebody else's.
Yeah. I'm sure you could have thousands of these, but walk us through one of these amazing wishes that was granted and the impact that it had on that child's life. If you could pick one.
Yeah. I mean, I get asked this all the time. We've granted over 300,000 wishes. So
holy cow.
And it sounds like so made up and cheesy to say like every one of them matters. I really think they do, because the big gestures, like we gave 9 cars to individuals who aged out of foster care last fall, not this past fall, in 2022. And that's extraordinary, right? And of course that felt amazing to see these, like they thought they were getting a trinket as like a memento and a thank you for visiting us in New York. And they got a car. Like that, being part of that was huge and beautiful. But so is like reading a little note like on our site that says, I can't believe you got me these shoes. I've wanted them forever. Like that simple, that simple gratitude for something that most of us take for granted, like that's also really amazing. I will say there's a young man named Damien who passed away, who has left just a huge mark on my life. We met Damien, we had granted some wishes for him, and then a while later he had come to us. He'd aged out of foster care. And he had been, he was going into hospice care. He was in heart failure, in his late 20s.
Wow.
And he said, I just want to be able to plan my funeral before I die. Like I want it to be, which is such a heavy wish, but he wanted it to be like a celebration, and he wanted it to be really representative of who he was. And so that's initially kind of how we got like more deeply in conversation and connection with him. But what ended up transpiring was like this just beautiful relationship that, we would text each other because he couldn't really talk a lot towards the end. So we were just able to text. And every night he would say to me and Nicole, my deputy director, he would text us hearts and he would say, good night, my loves. And the heart in this human being was just, it almost felt so unfair that somebody was in heart failure, had the biggest heart I ever knew, and we were shortly before he passed, I came to him and I was like, I don't know if you're okay with this, and totally tell me like no if you don't want to do it. But he was a huge ally. He was a part of the LGBTQ community and also a huge ally. And I said, would it be okay if we created a legacy fund in your name? So we could keep granting wishes and tell your story. And he just was like, I can't believe that I'm going to get to do this. And it made him so happy. And a very famous, I won't say it because I think she doesn't want anyone to know, but a very, very, very famous, very celebrated individual who has supported us in the past. So if you Google it, you could probably find them, sent me a video to send to him because he loved her so much. And and she's very cool, very genuine, and didn't want any, like, was, never public.
Right.
He wrote to me and he just couldn't believe, he was like, I can't believe that that she wanted to send me this video. And I said, I'm so glad that he got to see that his life mattered to so many people, and that it was going to continue, his heart was going to continue to impact so many people. So, all of the things that relationship, that wish, and we've had other funeral wishes, sadly, and some heartbreaking circumstances, but that one, just because it was this very heartbreaking thing, but it was really about joy. I mean, it was about legacy, being remembered in a way that felt real and true, and being able to just, like, I just felt like I felt so fortunate, and that I got to know him, even though it was short. So he just left a really big mark, and we continue, and the Legacy Fund continues. We continue to be able to grant wishes, and every time we do, it's almost like you feel him just there, being like, yeah, this is what I wanted.
I'm so struck by, these aren't, I want to go to Disney World and meet Mickey Mouse. Although I'm sure there may be some of those, but these are, I really want this pair of shoes, or I really want to be able to help someone plan this beautiful, joyful celebration of my life. I mean, these are like really profound things that we take for granted every day, that's the wishes of these amazing souls.
Yeah, the most beautiful thing about what we do is that we don't tell people what they should wish for. We don't tell people what you should think is good or joyful or worth it. I'm just asking you, what do you wish for? And I was just talking to somebody else about this before we talked today. The act of wishing itself is difficult. It's not something that everybody feels comfortable doing, because life has not been that way for them, where there is a comfort level. There's been a lot of disappointment. There's also been a lot of people that have told them, get what you get and you don't get upset, or just be glad you have anything. So when individuals trust us with a really unique personal wish, it's not lost on me that it was hard to even ask for that. And so again, I kind of go back to this thing of grace. Like, even if somebody gets a little frustrated with us because it's not exactly as they wanted it or is faster, you have to kind of take yourself out of it and say, like, it was hard for them to even ask. And now that they have, like, they're also, when you're vulnerable like that, as human beings, sometimes our first reaction of vulnerability is to put a wall back up and to be mad, because it's easier to do that than to be vulnerable. And so, I love that about our program, that it's not like we decided everybody should get shoes, or that everybody should get a trip to Disney, which we do get asked for a lot, and they never give them to us for free, by the way. That's another great thing I love, is people will comment and be like, why don't you just ask PlayStation to donate this? Or why don't you ask Disney? And I'm like, you don't think we've tried that? Like, you also don't think, like, we're not one of, like, how many million charities out there? Like, I also know they're a business. Do I think they could be giving more away? Sure, they all could. But, like, I get it. But I do love that our program is truly designed to be for individuals. It really is about choice. It really is about dignity. It's about no judgment. Of course, we don't let people wish for, like, illegal stuff or, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, if I encourage people to go to our site and not just read one wish or 3 wishes, read a bunch. I do think you'll find some of yourself in some of these stories. And I think that that's another thing I love about what we do, is it really is about a movement. It's about connection. It's not one celebrity or rich person who's funding this operation. This is a movement of tens of thousands of people who want to share kindness with others. So, going there and reading the stories and seeing, like, we're a lot more alike than we are different.
Well, you were saying how, how hard it can be for these individuals to even ask for the wish. But by you fulfilling and granting that wish, you give them that they are seen and they have value and they matter.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself, they can take that outside of whatever the wish was and take that in and use that to help fuel them for what they're going through, which I just think is extraordinary.
Yeah. And think of the doors it could open,
Right.
when you have a child or a young adult who makes a wish for an experience where they're meeting people who are also having that experience, who have
Right.
share the same interests, hobbies. Maybe it's a sports team, and so they get a coach and they get teammates. And
Right.
think also about that opportunity to expand their world. And that's why years ago when One Simple Wish started, and most foundations turned us down, and most foundations still do turn us down because we can't measure impact. That was one of the things that they said, like, well, how do you know it actually makes an impact? Are kids going to school more because of it? Do their grades improve? I was like, they're happy. I don't like,
Right.
they're happy. There's greater connection. There's that feeling of feeling seen,
Self-worth.
Yeah. I don't think that we need to measure everything.
Right.
And I think also, like, the research, the data, like, we all know the answers to a lot of the questions we keep on asking.
Right.
And yet we're not doing the things that really address the answer. So, it's, I love that the way we do things really is about nothing more than letting people know that they're seen, heard, and loved.
Right. So what advice would you have for other advocates that are truly passionate around supporting children's rights and improving the foster care system like you do and have? What advice do you have for those individuals and advocates? What can they do?
Oh, I would say first and foremost, stop towing the line. I think that there's a lot of big names out there, and I think that the best advocates are the ones who challenge the norm, who challenge that's the way we always did this.
Right.
And I think that if you're really an advocate, then advocate for the people, not for other nonprofits or other government-run systems. I think that if more people did that, then maybe there would be power in those numbers and we wouldn't be so scared. But I think that, there's a lot of money in the child welfare system. There's a lot of bullies in the child welfare system. You will never see me invited to speak at a conference related to child welfare. You can Google and scour. I don't. Wow. I'm not like the darling of child welfare, but you'll quickly figure out who is. And then I will say, when you do that, see what they're advocating for. Right. Are they really advocating for families and kids and the actual needs to be met? Or are we advocating for more of the same because these systems generate revenue and this revenue helps these organizations stay alive? And that's a tough question to ask yourself. And it's not that I haven't asked it of myself. Like, is what we're doing really making a difference? Is what we're doing part of the problem? I ask myself that every day. I think that if you're a really good advocate, you will ask yourself hard questions. And you won't be afraid if you're in a room, especially of people you can, consider to be powerful or influential, that if you disagree with something you hear, that you're not afraid to stand up and ask why. Right. We all get one shot here, us too. Right. And so if you really want to make a mark, make a mark.
That's a beautiful place to stop right there. But first, where can our listeners learn more about One Simple Wish?
They can go to oneSimpleWish.org. They could follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We don't do too much on Twitter or X now, whatever you named it. But we're on there. But any social platform, Instagram's, I would tell people, is the best place to go to see like actual stories. I think we do a really good job. We use stock photography and for the most part, because we also are really big on protecting.
Protective, absolutely.
Protecting identity. But yeah, oneSimpleWish.org. And I love feedback. So if people do go and they have questions or they disagree with me, or, you don't have to just write to me because you like, I love things that say like, I was inspired, or, I'm doing this, but I also love people who are kind of like, hey, let's have this conversation, because, that's where growth happens, right? Is when somebody challenges you. So you can do that.
Danielle, thank you so much. This was amazing. For our listeners, we will have links for One Simple Wish, all of their social media platforms, and Danielle's bio in the show notes. And we'll see you back here next time. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Women Igniting Change. I know creating change matters to you. If you enjoy what we talk about on the show, please take one action today and share it with someone who could benefit from listening. Until next time, keep standing up and speaking out for what matters.